Okay, so let's get started in the second video for this second module for electronic waste management. So, we had looked at some like a definition, quantities from the Indian contest, categories as we defined. Now, as I said, we will look at more on what is the environmental and health hazard, why we should even be worried about all this electronic waste. As I have been saying again and again, we should always look at what is the reason, what is the logic behind all these discussion that we are having. As identified in the previous video, we talked about that electronic waste has a lot of non-ferrous and organic pollutants right there. So, those are the ones you looked at. We had arsenic, barium, beryllium, brominated flame retardants and all those different stuff. In the next slide, you will see some more. And they get used in different type of applications, which is listed over here. You have semiconductors, diodes, microwaves, LEDs, solar cells. That's where arsenic is getting used. We all know, especially if you are familiar with part of West Bengal and Bangladesh and several other places in the country and also abroad, arsenic poisoning is there. Like unfortunately arsenic is there in the groundwater in many of these areas, and people get exposed to arsenic. And then we are also using arsenic in electronics. We are using barium in electronics, which is electronic tubes, filler for plastics, lubricants. Beryllium is used in switchboards, printed circuit boards. Brominated flame retardant, as I said, anything which gets flame retardant means anything which gets heated up, there you will have BFR. If you just think logically, it is flame retardant. Retardant means to stop the flame, it will not let the flame proceed. So, even if you have little bit of, say, because of things getting heated up, you may have a little ignition. Many times you see some spark, like things when it gets really heated up, the electrical wires catches fire on its own. And so, if it catches fire, there should be something which will retard that fire. So, which will stop the fire before the whole machine gets blown up. So, for that BFR is used, that is the brominated flame retardant, and then you will see it in casing, you will see it in circuit boards, you will see in the like a plastic casing, especially in the plastic casing, circuit board, cables, PVC cables. So, wherever things can potentially catch fire, you will have these BFRs present. So, this is these are the, like we looked at the pollutant list, where it is being used and why we are worried about them. What is the danger associated with these stuff? What is the danger right there? Why we should be even thinking about these? So, if you look at the danger, of course, arsenic, everybody, like if you have done any environmental course, even water or any course, you know that arsenic is bad. It's if you have a chronic exposure, chronic means long term exposure. If you have a long term exposure of arsenic, it can lead to various diseases. You will have the skin disease, you have nerve conditions. Chronic exposure also leads to some sort of cancer. It's a carcinogen and can often be a fatal as well if it's not detected early. So, arsenic has that kind of exposure. Barium again lead to brain swelling. It leads to brain swelling, muscle weakness, damage to heart, liver and all that. Animal studies have revealed that increased blood pressure, barium exposure leads to increased blood pressure, changes in the heart for if you are getting a long period of time. Beryllium, it is a carcinogen. Chronic beryllium disease, like which is called berylliosis. It is a disease which actually affects our lungs. And the exposure to beryllium also causes a form of a skin disease, that is it's a poor wound healing, and what like bumps you get those skin problems. Then BFRs, if it's a halogenated, bromine, if you remember from your chemistry, chlorine, bromine, all those things are called halogens as well. So, it's a whenever you burn halogenated plastics, halogenated case material, it releases toxic emissions, including dioxins, which lead to severe hormonal disorder. So, that is why dioxins and furans that you hear about in the terms of air pollution. So, as you can see, there are several, all these, this is a one, and then I think we have several, a couple of more list in the next slide. But this is the reason why we are even discussing this this is the reason why I have included this in the course. So, we love electronics, we cannot live without electronics these days. Every time you get up in the morning, even your alarm clock is now your cell phone. you put your alarm clock in the cell phone, you watch all like all these WhatsApp, Facebook, everything. Without cell phone you cannot even now imagine the life. So think about if you don't have your smartphone with you, and if you have no data connection these days, it becomes really difficult to pass the time. And maybe just 10-15 years ago it was people were okay, but now it's become a addiction. Like everybody wants to have this smartphone, but and many of these is not only smartphone, but smartphone itself, like if whatever smartphone you have, if you Google the details of the smartphone, you are actually carrying maybe 20 to 25 elements of the periodic table. Everybody of you have looked at periodic table in your high school and maybe in the middle school itself, but the different elements from the periodic table, at least 20 or maybe more, depends on model, depends on the newer ones are actually trying to get away with many of these heavy metals, but for the older ones used to have around 25-30 of the heavy metals from the periodic table is there in your smartphone. So you are carrying 25-30 elements in your pocket all the time. Of course, if it's in the pocket, it's not harmful. I'm not saying from your pocket things will leach into your skin, but that's not going to happen. But when it gets dumped into the environment, while you are making these smartphones, when you are trying to get this extraction of these heavy metals, that's a mining pollution and all that, but and then industrial pollution. But say when you will dispose of these electronics, this smartphone will not be with you forever. You will probably buy a new one every year. iPhone 7, iPhone 6, then 7, 7s, whatever, 8, I don't know what they keep on every 6 or 8 months. There is a new version of phone is coming, Samsung, whatever company you look at, and many times even if you don't want the new phone, you buy it because it looks cooler, or there is a peer pressure because some of your colleagues have bought a newer phone. So how can you use the old one from 3G to 4G? Just recently we saw that BSNL is going to start testing 5G now. So we'll have 5G coming up pretty soon, and your old phone may not work on 5G, then you have to buy the new phone. So old phone you will keep in your drawer for a while, but ultimately you will dump it because you cannot, how long you will keep all these things in your place. So if it goes into the environment, when people are trying to recover these heavy metals out of that, and in the process what the people try to, in the recycling, informal recyclers, what they try to recover is what is valuable for them, and the valuable materials are copper and to certain extent aluminum, copper, aluminum and gold. Gold is what they are really after. So as you know, gold is pretty expensive. So gold is what they are really after. So in the process of extracting gold, all these other pollutants are getting released into the environment. So these are the other pollutants which is out there. It is getting into the environment in the process of extracting gold, because that's they are not after these because they are very minute quantities. It doesn't make much sense. They don't know how to extract these, but they are more focused on gold because gold is much more expensive. And if they got little bit of gold, that's what they are after, and to some extent copper as well. So that's why we are even talking about this, and as you know, more and more of these electronics are being made. More and more of these will ultimately come to the waste disposal stream, and we need to think about this waste. And as we are talking about a smart city, one of the smart, in fact, if you talk to a layman, go to a railway station or a bus stop and ask people what they think about a smart city, most of the people, when they think about a smart city, they think everything online. Everything I can do with my phone, but that's one part of it. That's not the entire part. As you remember from the earlier video we had on what is the different components of a smart city, waste management, water management, those are also there. Say you may have everything online, all nice Wi-Fi everywhere, but if you don't have water, that's not really a smart city. If you don't have a proper working toilet, if you don't have a proper waste management system, that's not a smart city. And the waste management system also includes the electronic waste, because as people are getting, if everything is on the internet, people more and more people need those smartphone or a laptop to go on internet to do your driver license and what all the different government activities that you need to do, including banking and all that. So that means more and more of e-waste. So we have to start thinking about proper e-waste management. That's the reason I included this portion, at least to give you some idea about what is this, what is the components of electronic waste. Of course, more detailed course is actually needed in this area and may be provided in future. We'll see about that. So that's one list, and then other similar table here. You look at other pollutants: cadmium, chromium, we have cadmium, chromium, cobalt, copper and lead. So, here cadmium used, we all know cadmium batteries. You remember that cadmium batteries which has been, so cadmium battery is there, batteries, pigments, solders, soldering iron, alloys, circuit board, computer batteries, monitors, CRTs all use cadmium. Then chromium is mostly used in dyes and pigments, switches, solar panels. Cobalt is used as an insulator. And copper is there, copper wires, circuitry, pigment, copper ribbon and all those things are there. Copper at it's not that much of a problem at a low concentration, and if it goes but otherwise it does have some effect, but not as bad as some of the other elements out there. Lead, which is used a lot and which gets most of the attention in terms of the electronic waste. It's a lead rechargeable batteries, solar transistors, lithium battery, PVC, stabilizers, LEDs, thermoelectric elements, circuit boards, everywhere you see lead. And lead is also there in the glass panel, which prevents you from getting the harmful rays, so coming to you when you are watching TV and other stuff. So, if you look at the impact, again here we have the dangers. What are the dangers from there? So, similar as the previous slide, it is again cadmium is a carcinogen. You see the carcinogen, long term exposure cause Itai disease, which actually our body structure gets confused between cadmium and calcium. We all need calcium. That is why we have been told to drink milk. Like when you are a small kid, your parents, your mom will keep on saying like have milk at least maybe once a day, or if possible twice a day. So, because that helps us to have good bone, and we need milk as part, or milk or something which has calcium. If you do not like milk, you can have something. Many people take calcium tablets as well. So, but we need calcium for our good bone health. But what happens is, if we have cadmium, and that has happened not from electronic waste, from other scenario. In Japan long back, there was a industry which had an affluent coming into a rice growing paddy field, like a paddy growing field. As you know, paddy means it has to be on the standing water. Water is always there in the paddy field. So, there they have this water getting this industrial affluent, and the industrial affluent had high cadmium. So, the paddy gets confused between calcium and cadmium. If you remember from your chemistry class from the middle school, your teacher must have said that anything which is closer on the periodic table, they have similar properties. If you go back and look at while you are watching this video, if you open your periodic table, if you have, or you watch it, look at the periodic table later on, you see the calcium and cadmium are very close to each other. So, that means they have similar properties. So, the paddy gets confused, the rice plant gets confused between calcium and cadmium. It uptakes cadmium thinking it is calcium. And the same thing happens to our body. So, if it comes into the rice, and from the rice, if it comes to our body when we eat rice during our lunch or dinner, it's our body also gets confused between cadmium and calcium, and we get cadmium getting deposited in our bones rather than calcium, if you have the cadmium exposure. And this cadmium getting into the bones makes it more brittle. Actually, it does not do the job that calcium is supposed to do. Calcium is supposed to make the bone strong, but cadmium makes it brittle. What does it do? It leads to more breakage of bones. So, if you had fallen down, you will have the breakage of your bones in the body, and that is what that is what the Itai disease is. Like people say, bone is getting weaker. So, that leads to what is talking about here, Itai disease. So, that is what which causes like severe pain in the joints and the spines, because that is what it should be, our calcium should be there, but cadmium is making way. Chromium, especially the hexavalent chromium. When we say hexavalent chromium, I think we talked about that earlier as well. It is the chromium 6. That is what the hexavalent chromium is. So, it is a chromium with the oxidation state of 6. So, chromium with the oxidation state of 6 is the hexavalent chromium. So, that is a potential carcinogen. It can pass through our skin and can get into our body. It damages the kidney. So, those things are there in terms of the hexavalent chromium. The whole Erin Brockovich movie, the Hollywood movie of Julia Roberts, was actually based on hexavalent chromium contamination. Then cobalt, again if it affects liver, kidney, pancreas, heart, as well as the skeleton and the skeleton muscles, and it produces tumors as well in animals, and likely a human carcinogen. Copper, if too much copper can cause you nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, kidney damage and health. Copper at a low level is actually good for health as well. We do even many of these chromium, if you look at the daily supplement like a multivitamin supplement that you get, many times multivitamin and multi-mineral supplement that you get, you have traces of these as well. It becomes a problem when you have too much. Anything toxic which it's above the based like above the like what can be some at trace level, some of these are good for health as well, but when it goes to a higher concentration it becomes a problem. Lead, we all talk about lead a lot in terms of electronic waste. Lead creates neural problem. It's a neurotoxin. It's a neurotoxin and that affects the kidneys and the reproductive system as well. High quantities can be fatal. It affects the mental development of kid. So, if you remember, if you go to the next time you go to the petrol pump, either with your own car or if you are just going with whenever, like going in whatever way, when you be at the petrol pump, look at that sign, it says unleaded petrol. What does that mean? That means there used to be lead in petrol earlier. Now it is no more lead is there. Why we got rid of lead? Because lead is not good for us. Lead is a neurotoxin. It helps the brain development. And if you think about petrol and diesel, the exhaust coming out, exhaust comes out at the lower level. That's the level most of the kids say. If the kid is walking on the bylane, on the lane next to the road, and all these smokes coming out from these vehicles, they are at much, the kids are much basically they come at the lower elevation where the kids' nose are, and the kids are getting these, if they get exposed to this lead, that will affect their brain development. And there has been a study done where people have looked at the blood lead concentration and the teeth lead concentration and their behavior, the kids' behavior in the class. We saw it has been documented that people who have more lead in their blood or in teeth, actually they cannot concentrate in the classroom. And people, when we don't understand, we say, oh, he's a rowdy person, he cannot, but it's not actually, it's because of the lead, it's affecting his brain. He or she is not able to concentrate, and if they're not able to concentrate, of course they will create some nuisance in the class. So that's it affects the neurodevelopment. So that's why we try to get rid of lead in everything that we use. We don't want lead. We don't want us getting exposed to lead. So that's why again lead is one of the biggest source of lead in environment is coming from this electronic waste. So that's why the initial discussion on electronic waste in early, say just late 90s and early 2000, when it started in Western European and in US, people were mostly, the thing came from lead, because we got rid of lead in our petrol. Most of the world doesn't use lead anymore in the paints, the paints that use the Asian paints and Dulux paints and all that. Some of the Indian paints still use lead. Unfortunately, the lead is not banned in India in terms of lead in the paint, which it should be, because many of the world country has already banned, because you may get exposed to some lead from there as well. But that's in electronics again, this because of the lead it got most of the attention initially, and then there are other heavy metals present there and organics present there as well. So some more stuff in terms of the pollutants. We have liquid crystals, we have lithium, we have mercury. Mercury, another bad stuff. Mercury, it's there. Lithium is there. Liquid crystal. Lithium is used in mobile telephone, photographic equipments. Mercury, it's there in copper machines, steam irons, batteries, clocks, pocket calculators, switches, LCD. Everywhere mercury is there. That's another stuff we are trying to get rid of. Mercury. Nickel is there as well. So if you look at the danger from them, lithium, corrosive to the eyes, skin and the respiratory system, affects the central nervous system, kidneys and immune system. For mercury, mercury is a nasty stuff. It affects the mercury is one metal which stays as liquid, which stays in solid, and can also get into the gaseous form, and in the gaseous form it can travel much faster. So it's one of the dangerous element which we are trying to get rid of mercury in most of the stuff. That's why in you may have, as a kid, you may have played with mercury, and as long as you don't, it doesn't get into your body, it's okay. But if you remember the mercury thermometers, the thermometers that we used to use in our hospitals or in our house, what we used to buy earlier, we used to have mercury thermometer. Nowadays you get mostly digital thermometer, you don't have mercury in them. We are trying to get rid of those mercury thermometers as well. We don't want any people getting exposed to mercury. So it affects the central nervous system, kidneys, impairs fetal growth. So that's why mercury also has a chance to get bioaccumulated. It goes bioaccumulated in fish. So some of the fish like tuna fish, and I'm forgetting the name of other fish, there are certain categories of fish which it is advised that pregnant women should not eat that fish, because the mercury has a tendency to accumulate in the flesh of those fish, and that affects the baby's growth. It can also, if it's there, it can also impact harm infants through mother's milk. That's why if mercury gets into the body of mom, and then it can go through the breast milk to the baby, and then it will impact their nervous system development and all that. So then other thing is nickel, which is used in alloy batteries, relays, semiconductor, that can cause lung cancer, nose cancer, like a prostate cancer, asthma, chronic bronchitis. So it's essentially a carcinogen. Nickel is a carcinogen, which can cause cancer. Then PCBs, now PCBs, which is polychlorinated biphenyl, it used in transformers, capacitors, softening agents for paint, glue and plastic. PCBs have been shown to cause a number of serious non-cancer health effects effects in animals, including effects on the immune system. It reduces your immune system, reproductive system, nervous system, endocrine system. So plastics, circuit boards, cabinets, plastic we use a lot. Carcinogen, it can become, it can harm reproductive system, immune system. Burning PVC releases dioxins. BFR can leach into landfills as well. So there is a lot of issues associated with plastics are becoming a nuisance actually. Once we have started using so much of plastics now, we cannot even think of life without plastic. From the early morning, when you take that brush in your hand, that brush to do your toothbrush, that is plastic. The toothbrush bristles are plastics, and all the way when you go to home, when you go to bed while going for sleeping, most of the like you will throughout the day we touch and use so much plastics, and plastic is it's a nice material, it's very convenient material, but now after using it for last say 2.5 decades, so that world is using a lots of plastics, it is becoming a nuisance in terms of it is showing up in the ocean, it is showing up in our rivers. Just recently there was a study that it is even showing up in the groundwater. So think about that, plastic getting into the groundwater, that's then it is showing up in the tap water, and that's I don't know, this is just an initial study. I hope we don't see so much of that, because plastics are not good. Plastics are good outside our body. We don't want plastic inside our body, because it creates a lot of problem. It is a carcinogen, it can harm reproductive system, it impairs the immune system. Burning plastic also leads a lot of dioxins and furan disposal. Then selenium, another stuff where you can used in photoelectric cells, pigments, photocopiers, fax machine, that's where selenium is used. Again, exposure to, as you can see on the slide, exposure here, exposure to high concentration of selenium causes selenosis, and major the symptoms are you will have a hair loss, nail becomes brittle, neurological abnormality, you start feeling numbness and odd sensation. So that's leads to problem from this. So as you can see, many of these stuff has many of these have components that is used in electronics have some health impact, and since we use them, we are, again, electronics is something which everybody is fascinated about. So we do use lots of electronics, but at the same time we need to be careful in terms of the waste that is generated from electronics, so that it is managed properly. So the last table in terms of the pollutants, so let's look at that. Silver, zinc, toner dust, americium and CFCs. Those pollutants, they are again silver used in capacitor switches, zinc is used in steel, brass alloys, disposable, rechargeable batteries, toner dust of course in toner cartridge, laser printers, copiers, americium, which is a medical equipment, fire detectors, active sensing elements and smoke detectors, CFCs of course cooling unit and insulating foam. So In terms of silver, it can cause cardiac abnormalities, permanent brain and nervous system damage. Zinc, too much zinc can cause imminent health problems such as stomach cramps, skin irritation, vomiting, nausea, anemia. Zinc is it's not that bad as some other elements. It's harmful at higher concentration. Toner dust, it leads to respiratory problem like asthma, bronchitis, those kind of issues. Americium, it's a radioactive element, so of course things needs to be managed properly. CFCs, we all know it has a bad effect on the ozone layer, results in increased incidence of skin cancer in humans, genetic damage in many organisms. CFCs we are trying to get rid of as well in many of the electronics or electrical equipments. We are not our goal is to get rid of CFCs, and that's what if you look at the international protocol on climate change and all those global documents, they are talking about like a reduction in CFCs. If you look at the CFC production over last few decades, you will see that there is a drastic reduction in CFC, and we are using other materials out there. But in the waste stream, still you will see CFCs showing up. So that the last four tables were just to give you an idea about what are different types of contaminant is there, and what is the health effect related to those contaminants and where they are used. Again, this whole course, like I keep on saying that again and again, that whenever you read something, of course, always think about why it is, what is the significance. So I think that now after looking at these four tables, you will appreciate that why if in fact we worry about this electronic waste management, because of all these pollutants, different pollutants may have adverse impact if the waste is not managed properly. If the waste is managed properly, be it a municipal solid waste or C&D waste or electronic waste, the level of pollutant may be different, the type of pollutant may be different, the concentration of pollutants may be different, but from each of these waste stream, and the nature of the pollutant may be different too, but from each of these waste stream, if we manage it properly, there are technologies out there to minimize the health impact, to minimize the environmental impact. So if you don't do proper disposal, what is the problem here? Like if you look at the electronic waste, so in this table we are trying to look at what are the hazards due to improper disposal. If the disposal is not proper, just now I said that if disposal is proper, we will not have the problem. But as you know, and as I have advised you to look at on YouTube, you can go and see how the e-waste is managed in India right now. Unfortunately, the formal sectors are being developed, as I will show you the name of lots of companies are coming up, but unfortunately they are not running to their capacity. It's hardly, many times they are not able to get the electronic waste to them. The reason for that is people like you and me, we expect some money from those electronic waste. We want that if I give you an old cell phone to the kabadi wala, I'll get maybe 200 or 300 rupees. But those kabadi walas will give you those 200 and 300 rupees because they don't have to set up a nice plan, they don't have to manage follow the rules of SPCB and Central Pollution Control Board, they are not audited, there is no stuff, they will just send it, they give it to those people who are just after gold and other stuff, and they will recover some of the material from there, but in the process they contaminate all the our air, soil and water. But we are getting those 200, but maybe later on we are spending 2000 in the hospital because of getting that 200 at first place, because of all that pollution that is created because of it. But these companies, they are setting up their plants, they are investing money, so they cannot give you those 200, 300 rupees for those mobile phones, because they already have invested a lot of money. If they give you 200, 300 and they have to have all these sophisticated tools to extract different material, they have to follow, if they do it properly, they do it ethically, they should follow all these SPCB, CPCB guideline or the new e-waste management rules. They will not be able to make any profit, they may go out of business. Maybe after 10 years when they have grown up, because initial investment has been they have made some money, then maybe possible. But any country you go to, in fact if you are in European Union, especially the Western European countries, or in Canada, not in US yet, but if you are in Canada or in Western European countries, when you buy a laptop, you actually pay around $30, $35 extra as the waste disposal fee. and here when I'm giving away my old laptop, I expect that I will get some money back from them. So that's the difference, and that's why the companies there in Canada, they can or in Germany or Denmark and other places, they have a very good e-waste management system in place, because the companies are getting money to do that. The government is giving some money for them to get those companies working. Unfortunately, in Indian scenario, we always look things in a very suspicion, and the industry is responsible for that attitude that common people has. Every time we look at industry, that probably kuch to gadbad hai idhar. That may not be there, but that's had our attitude. But coming to here, if we don't do the proper disposal, what is the impact of improper disposal? If you go for incineration, which we talked about earlier, is like if you do a incineration which happens like when they burn these electronics improperly, you have brominated flame retardants getting released, generates extremely toxic dioxins and furans. PVCs generates toxic flue gases, that's what you see. Landfilling will have hazardous metals showing up there. Recycling, it can cause, or especially due to recycling of plastics halogenated, or when they do it improperly. If you have a nice e-waste recycling plant where you have a proper control of all the emissions, you have your control treatment systems out there, then these releases will not be there. But if the way it is recycled right now, it leads to hazardous emissions of halogenated substance, heavy metals. Shredding without proper disassembly causes hazardous substance disappearing into the environment, so all dispersed into the environment. So all those things shows up. So that leads to that we need to focus on proper recycling, and we need to recycle it in a landfilling of e-waste leads to leaching of lead into groundwater, could potentially leach. If the CRT is crushed and burned, emits toxic fumes. You can capture those toxic fumes, but you need to have the proper air pollution control. Cadmium from one mobile phone battery is enough to pollute 600 meter cube of water. Can you think about that? One mobile phone battery, if it goes into the water, that consumes 600 meter cube. 1 meter cube is 1000 liters. So 600 times 1000 liters. So almost so that much water it can be polluted. Polluted means the concentration will be higher than the drinking water limit for cadmium. Huge impact on health and environment because of e-waste around. Unfortunately, barely 4% of e-waste produced in India is recycled, and we are talking about proper recycling, which is not the improper recycling. Only 4% of e-waste produced in India is recycled, and that's the data is maybe around a year and a half old, so not too much old. So we need to do much better. So in the next video, we'll try to talk about how to go in a better scenario. So in this video, we talked about what are the different contaminants, how they are used, why they are used in electronics, and electronics and electrical equipments, and what are their adverse health impacts. And we talked why why this course is actually why this topic even should be studied. So we talked about those aspects. So in that, and the need for need for formal recycle, not informal recycling. And informal recycling is done in a very crude way, which creates a lot of environmental problem. So next we'll talk more in detail about what are the recycling in terms of in Indian scenario, how things are being done at present. So with that, let's close this video. Again, I will remind you that we have posted one questionnaire to get your feedback on how e-waste is managed in your area, how you are managing your e-waste, say, for last few years, and do you see any improvement in last few years. So we have put some very general, very small questions. Hardly, it will not take you more than 10 minutes to answer those. Please do that, and all of you, please do that, so that we can collate all that information and share with all of you in the last video of this course. And we'll do that for electronic waste also, as well as the earlier form that we sent you for municipal solid waste. So thank you, and again, see you in the next video.